Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Merry Christmas to all of you who celebrate. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. Hikers, campers of Reddit. What's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to you while out in the woods? Please remember to like, share, comment, hype, listen, and ask for shoutouts. And subscribe. And enjoy. I was working as a camp worker when it happened to me. Other than me, there was a Navajo my age also working. Our job was to look after the horses and campers, make food, keep the site clean for the next set of campers, etc. The company we worked for had a set of emergency rifles set up in a trailer we used, along with 2 guard dogs. One night, after a long trail ride, we had gotten back to camp only to discover there was a single coyote patrolling it. We watched it from a distance before it saw us and scurried off. I don't know why, but my Navajo friend and I had this really bad feeling after seeing it. The other workers didn't seem bothered, but they weren't the ones who had to live in the site 24/7. Maybe it was just nerves, but both of us had this feeling of being watched the entire night. So, eventually, night comes and we fall asleep. We wake to the banging on our door and someone wailing outside. We get up to investigate. Navajo friend goes and checks on the blinds and sees it's the campers, so he lets them in. They come inside and they're terrified. They tell us that one of the girls had heard what sounded like her friend outside hurt, only to step on her as she was making her way out of the tent. That's when the wailing began, which woke all of them up. It had apparently gone on for 20 or so minutes before they had come to wake us up. So, as they're telling us this, we hear it stop, only to start back up in a different spot, much closer to the camping site. At this time, we notice that the dogs with us are bristling. So both of us, being not very brave, we take down the rifles and exit the trailer with the dogs and make our way to the middle of the camp. From here, you could tell the sound was coming from just beyond the edge of the camp, where the area was pitch black. We gather some of the wood sitting next to us and start the fire back up, and that's when it gets bad. I've never been more terrified in my life. As soon as the wood catches, from all around us, the wailing starts up. The dogs just stand there next to us and start growling really hard. I had absolutely no idea what was going on, so I chambered around into my rifle, in which my friend follows suit. After that, it goes dead quiet. I mean, dead, like nothing was being heard. I don't know if it was from how scared I was or what, but the next thing I know, my name calling out from the dark to my left. I admit that at that moment, I pissed my pants. It was and still is the most terrifying moment of my life. I look at my friend and he's wide-eyed and his face is pale. He's looking between me and where my name came from and just as terrified as I was, if not more. We both back up closer to the campfire before he takes one of the burning branches and hurls it toward the name-calling spot. We hear a hidden and see something scurry away, only to have the dogs start barking right then. If there was anything left in my bladder at that point, it had come out. I look at my friend until he points at something, making its way slowly toward us. He points his rifle and fires at it, hitting whatever it was. After the initial shot, we kind of went crazy, firing at whatever made a sound in the brush. So, we stay outside of the trailer for the next night until the other workers come up. They see us both tired, still clutching the rifles and ask what happened. We go over everything, and they go to investigate. After a little while, they come back with 2 coyote bodies. Apparently, what had happened was the current set of campers had brought a large amount of meat to grill with, but hadn't thought to properly seal the containers, attracting the coyote pack. You had some fantastical things going through my brain, ranging from skinwalkers to ghosts to see the actual creature causing it was actually more terrifying than anything else. Was in Big Bend National Park about 20 years ago, prepping for a backpacking series presentation for REI. Big Bend is the western portion of Texas that dips downward along the bend of the Rio Grande that forms this border with Mexico. It's mixing high desert and smaller mountains. Gorgeous place, great history. I was hiking the area near Santa Elena Canyon, probably a couple of hours before sunset, to try and get pics for his presentation. This area of the park opens into a comparatively flat section of the basin where the river broadens and the wildlife tends to be more diverse and obvious there. Hence, there I was. I was several hundred meters away from my van, which was parked in a designated lot at what passed for a trailhead at the time. As I approached the river basin, near the mouth of the canyon, I saw something really unusual. So unusual, in fact, that it took a few seconds for my brain to sort the puzzle. Something was moving on the other side of the river, and it was big, man-sized, but low to the ground, the color of a deer maybe, and shuffling along. It looked, for first impression, to be a medium-sized white-tailed doe, lying on its side and moving like a snake. But that's not a thing that happened, so I moved a bit to improve my line of sight. It was a mountain lion, a big cat. It was creeping along, low, slung, hunting something that was probably no more than a stone's toss from where I was standing. I'd never seen one before, and when the visual information finally passed, I think my blood pressure froze. Then it looked at me. I'll probably never forget that in my life. Granted, at this time, and maybe still, the river was very low due to drought and unauthorized or unlawful irrigation practices upstream, and you could likely cross at several points at this location with minimal risk, but it was still quite broad and definitely looked the part of a potent wart barrier. Death Kitty does a series of double takes, head shifting from me to whatever the prey location, back and forth rapidly. Said calorie counter and risk calculator, trying to get a fix on this evening's menu. I die a little inside, maintaining my facing and begin slowly and quietly moving away. Not sure if I wasn't worth it, if the river was too much of an X factor, or if the biggin just really wasn't that into me. But no chase was given, and after breaking line of sight, I was able to get back to the van just fine with no sign of pursuit and some mild tachycardia. That was the longest short walk I've ever taken. Later that night, I was parked off the main park road in an area where big cats commonly hunted. I'll always remember being parked there, in the middle of nowhere, munching on slightly stale Oreos and a bottle of water, listening to the occasional growl or scream of a big cat peel out of the darkness, and being thankful for my relatively fortunate position on the food chain. Also, one night, I hallucinated on NyQuil, a side effect I regularly experience with the quills, after getting a respiratory illness and woke up screaming. I'm not a ranger, but I've hiked parts of the Appalachian Trail. This occurred in West Virginia, I believe. Happened about 8 years ago. Was hiking with a group. We spread out naturally based on hiking speed. I was in the middle-ish group of 4 of us, and one person had to stop to pull a tick off. Other two, one leader, stayed with them, but I decided to hike on ahead and see if I could catch up with the lead group. The AT is extremely well marked with white blazes, so I wasn't worried about getting lost. I knew the next landmark was an old logging road, and sure enough, I hit it about half a mile later. I decided I should wait for the rest of the group to catch up. So, while waiting, I hiked a bit down the old overgrown road which ran perpendicular to the trail. This was a low stone wall along one side, and I was strolling along it, checking for anything interesting like artifacts and stuff, when it was like I crossed an invisible line. All of a sudden, it was like sound cut off, no birds or insects called, when seconds ago, there had been multiple birds singing. Even leaves on the trees around me stopped rustling. It was just this sudden, unnatural, deafening silence. For whatever reason, I took a few more hesitant steps forward until I hit this invisible wall. It was like suddenly I was barraged by this feeling. I can only describe it as an intense unwelcome, as if I had entered the house of someone I knew hated me, but multiplied by 100. All of the hairs on my body stood straight up. I stopped dead in my tracks. The feeling was so strong that I didn't even want to turn my back. I couldn't see anything down the road, threatening or otherwise, that would give me this feeling, but I knew I had to leave immediately. I just knew I was not meant to be there, and if I stayed, something bad would happen. So I walked back slowly, never turning away from the road and trying really hard to not even blink. I finally crossed this invisible line again, and I could hear the birds singing and the leaves rustling. I didn't turn around until I heard the leader I had left earlier asking me if there was anything cool down the road. I was like, nope, let's keep going. Looking back, I figured it was a bear or cougar just out of sight that my instincts managed to pick up on, but at the time, damn, it just felt creepy and almost paranormal. Well, again, just another heartfelt thanks for each and every one of you. Read the comments yesterday, and I want to welcome Melissa Peabody back. I hope that your husband continues to recover and that you guys are doing well as a family. And also I saw that Nicole Raw, my thing messed up. Yes. Nicola Raw, sorry if I butchered that. Keeping you company on the night shift on Christmas Eve at hospital. Thank you for taking care of people through the holiday season and every day. So today I'll have the kids for a couple hours. I had them last night for Christmas Eve. They're not here right now, so it's a quiet morning at the house. I have a few more presents to finish wrapping, and I'll see you guys all again tomorrow. Have a great day, be safe, and hug the people you love. I was headed out to a shooting spot with two of my brothers, an old quarry we had been to several times that is located several miles up a logging road in a national forest. Every time we had been there before, it had been totally empty. Nothing other than a little scattered trash and old shell casings to indicate human presence, but not this time. As we moved and round the corner into the quarry, we see that a dozen or so ratty, rusted RVs and a couple of large tents had been set up in a circle. At the far end of the quarry, a portable stage had been set up beneath the tallest rock face, forming the top of the circle. On the stage was a large piece of charred wood that may have been a cross, though it was burned down pretty far and hard to tell. At this point, myself and my two brothers each have a handgun on our hips, and there is quite the arsenal in the back of our SUV. None of that mattered or gave us an iota of comfort. I whipped the car around as quick as I could to begin noping right out of there. Before he could finish turning, a small child walked up to the car from one of the tents. Against my better judgment, I cracked the window. "My dad says nobody should be here," the kid says. "We're just leaving," I managed to respond. The second I closed my mouth, a gravelly, slurred voice roared from the same tent the kid came from. I told you not to talk to the cops. I drove quicker than was advisable all the way back to the highway, and needless to say, we haven't visited that particular spot since then. I got one from my cousin, Steve, that I'd like to share. Keep in mind that I might be missing a few details and Steve could just be bullshitting me, but he seemed awfully serious when he told me. Steve's an outdoorsy person, likes to camp and hike and stuff. He never gave me specifics on where he was with this story, so he could have been anywhere in a forested area in the wilderness. He said in late September, early October, something like that, and this was in 2004, I think. Steve said he set up a little campsite in a small clearing, no bigger than like a large living room. The first night, everything went fine, no troubles at all, but that afternoon, quite a while after he'd woken back up, he felt oddly drawn to somewhere off in the distance, in the forest. He said he was like on autopilot and wasn't fully aware of what he was doing. Steve said he wasn't too far away from the campsite and into the trees when he noticed what looked like a toppled over grave. That's how he described it, at least. A rectangular slab of stone, but he said it was weirdly out of place and it definitely didn't belong there. He said it looked polished, sort of glossy and reflective. There was no writing or scrawling on it. It was smooth and plain, but despite it sitting on a pile of dead leaves, there was no forest debris on it. No twigs, fallen leaves, or even moss on it at all. This was very unusual, especially considering, to his knowledge, there was nobody around for miles, but it looked like it had been placed there very recently. At that moment, Steve said that he felt as though he had been picked up and dropped randomly somewhere on Earth and had zero clue as to where he was. He said, even though he could clearly make out the red canvas or nylon or whatever of his tent maybe 25 feet or so behind him, he said he was just utterly confused and totally unfamiliar with his surroundings. Then, he said two things happened very quickly. First, he felt an ice-cold wave of air hit him, like a cold wind on a frigid winter day, despite it being relatively warm for early autumn, and there was no wine present. The branches on the trees hadn't moved, and the leaves on the ground didn't budge at all. Second, he heard what sounded like a loud, deafening clap, like someone clapped their hands just once, really hard, and it echoed across the valley. Next thing he knew, the sun is already dipping below the horizon, and it's pretty dark in the woods. Only a split second earlier, it had been about 3:30 in the afternoon. Now it was closer to 8 p.m. At night, in the blink of an eye. Steve said he did not see the stone on the ground anywhere, and he booked it back to his tent, scared out of his mind. According to him, it wouldn't be a good idea to pack everything up right at dusk and try to make his way back to civilization during the night, so he'd have to wait until morning to do so. Now, I'd love to say that this was some creepy alien story, like he saw UFOs flying overhead, or there was like a skinwalker or wendigo or something, because those are creepy, but that was about it. Except for one other thing. He said he barely slept that entire night. All the while, he heard a seriously creepy sound not far from the tent. Steve said it sounded like someone snoring, and it might have simply just been a sleeping animal like a bear or mountain lion. Not too sure if they snore, but I'm guessing they do. Anyway, he said he waited a little bit after dawn broke until it was fully light out. He packed up his shit and got out of there, with the feeling he was being watched the entire time until he left the woods. I live in a valley on the edge of the city, and the hills around me were used as commercial plantations for growing pine trees. I wasn't very far from my home, but the trees and undergrowth were thick enough that I couldn't see the rest of the valley. so it had this eerie feeling to it. I quite liked the quiet and listening to the sound of the wind through the pines. Most of them were destroyed in a stormy Easter 2013. Quite surreal watching 60-foot pine trees being snapped in half, a dozen or so at a time. I would do a circuit through them that would take me about an hour and a half to 2 hours to complete, although at a pinch I could do it in an hour. The scariest thing I experienced would have been when a dairy cow came crashing through the underbrush in front of me. A cow might not sound like the worst thing that could happen, but I heard they could be pretty aggressive, and I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of one if it changed. The creepiest thing I experienced came before and after the storm. On more than one occasion, I had this feeling that I was being watched in the forest. I would stop and listen for a few minutes and see nor hear anything. It would disappear after a short while. Another occasional I found was a dead pig next to a dirt road on the edge of the forest, curled up like a dog or cat. After the storm, there was a few patches of thick undergrowth that remained. Although while walking through one of them, my dog kept staring up the hill beside me and would whimper. She'd also walk right beside me, which was unusual, as she was always a minimum of 5 or 6 meters ahead on the track on her lead. For what it's worth, I came across a large wooden crate, similar to the ones hunters and farmers have on their back of their utes to keep dogs in atop a flat part of a dirt road on the opposite side of the valley. There were a couple of tied-up plastic bags next to it, and it smelled of rotting flesh. Disappeared after a few days. So I live near the ghost town of Elvira, Pennsylvania. Back during World War II, the government claimed eminent domain and booted everyone out. Built a munitions bomb factory. Fast forward to now, a chunk of the land was given back to the community as state land. A portion of it hosts a federal prison, and a bunch of it sits unused by the government. The game lands contain the remains of a town, just foundations and wells at this point, and a bunch of bunkers. These bunkers are concrete igloos, like structures with a big metal door on one side, once used to store explosives, now used for teens to get drunk and do drugs. Over time, they have become covered in dirt and plant growth, so you might mistake it for a hill if you didn't see the door. There are local rumors that devil worshippers hang out in the game lands and have strange rituals in the woods and in some of the more out-of-the-way bunkers. I never believed these because every town has a place with devil worshipper rumors, but last year, my friend claimed it was true. He said his parents were hunting once and saw a group of people in robes around a fire, chanting as a figure, wearing a deer head mask, stood in the center. He also said that one time, while he and his dad were hunting, he heard the chanting or singing and saw the smoke. This particular friend is a real straight shooter, and I wouldn't think him the type to make shit up, so I'm tempted to believe him. Now, for my own experience, when I was in high school, myself and about 5 friends were all having an all-nighter at my house in the summer, playing manhunt in the woods, shooting each other with airsoft guns, the usual. At night, we all went out with flashlights in the woods because of the course we did. The woods around my house are the same woods as the game lands, and there are only 2 properties between mine and the game lands. We saw an orange light through the woods that I was pretty sure there wasn't a house there. My friends said it was the devil worshippers and started trying to freak out. I didn't believe in them then, and even if I did, I knew it wasn't that, but I played along to scare everyone. We went on a quest to find the devil worshippers and went toward the light. We left the path and began bushwhacking in the dark, now quite far from the house. We heard my neighbor's dog in the distance, barking its head off, probably at us, but Then it got really intense and made a horrifying noise no dog should make and stopped. I've seen the dog since then, so it didn't die. We were a bit taken aback by the noise, so we all stopped and listened. In the dark, from just beyond the reaches of our lights, we heard footsteps, bipedal sounds. Not a squirrel in the brush or a deer crashing through bushes, but a clear crunch, 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 crunch of the leaves. At that point, we all decided to head back. My friend and I wanted to keep going, but we didn't want to do it alone, so we conceded. We were all sleeping in the guest apartment over the garage, which is a separate building from the house. It is one of those 70s accordion-style doors, halfway up the stairs, separating the upstairs area from the hallway and bathroom downstairs. Later that night, well after midnight, when we were settled in and starting to doze off, those of us who were still awake heard something brushing against the door from the other side. It was a flimsy plastic linoleum thing, so it was moving as something bumped it, and we could hear the noise clearly. I gathered up the courage to say out loud, "Does anyone else hear something bumping the door?" I get a few shaky yeses from around the room. "Is anyone going to get up and check it out?" Several nopes from the others, and I sure as hell wasn't going to do it. It went away after a few moments, and we eventually fell asleep, somehow. Bit of an intro to get to the actual spooky part, but I hope you read through it. Back when I was 12 or 11, I was on a day trip out in the woods with my dad, kind of a secluded area, no people lived around for miles, and the trail itself wasn't maintained anymore. We saw no one else there per usual, as no other cars were there. A little while later, probably a good mile and a half in front of the entrance, we stopped walking to relax for a little bit. I had found a nice solid stick during the walk and was fooling around with it. There was a semi-rotten stump where we had chosen to sit, and I discovered hitting it with the stick actually made a really nice deep thunk noise. So I hit it a couple of times, hit rest, hit rest, hit rest, following that pattern. After a few seconds, I realized there was an echo from far off, even deeper in the woods. Not too weird, as there was definitely enough stuff in the area that would bounce the sound back, so I keep messing with it, and my dad joined in too. In total, it was only about 5 to 10 minutes of playing with the stick and stump, and we stopped and decided we're going to grab our stuff and head back. Then, from deep in the woods again came the 3 distinct thunk noises. It couldn't be an echo at this point. We looked at each other confused and were wondering what it was like. I said, "Other people being this far out in this spot, it's very unlikely." But then 3 thunks came again, much closer than they were before. We grabbed our stuff and booked it out of there. Still don't know what exactly it was. Had it been a person, they would have been sprinting to move that quickly between sounds. And if it was a person, why were they coming right for us? Never been back to that area since.